What's up? You gotta unmute, man. You gotta unmute.
Hello.
Hey, what's up?
Hey, what's up? Nice
What's
to
on your
meet
mind?
you, Mr. Dyer. I've been
Yes, sir.
watching you recently. I've been going back and forth between Catholicism and Orthodoxy, so it's a pleasure to meet you, to finally speak to you, and
Yes,
things
sir.
like that. I actually recently became Catholic. I finally got confirmed in it. So I just wanted to ask you about the Orthodox position then. So how is everything you just said just now with the other gentleman, how is the Orthodoxy any better? Because here's how I see it, right? Let's say you're right about like the false doctrines and whatever stuff at the Catholic Church, right? Wouldn't that just say? I don't see the difference between that and, let's say, I don't know, the Bishop of Antioch also had false doctrine, and also they had false doctrines and stuff like that. Would they not also be?
Yeah, but the Orthodox Church isn't built on one dude, and via Vatican I, the Roman Catholic system is. So it's not devastating to the Orthodox ecclesiology if the Bishop of Antioch becomes a heretic. It is devastating to the Roman Catholic ecclesiology and system if the Bishop of Rome is a heretic.
Not necessarily, because he could be a heretic, but that doesn't mean that he taught universal definitive doctrine.
Okay. Have you read Vatican I?
Not fully, no.
Right. So Vatican I excludes the possibility of the Bishop of Rome teaching error. And it doesn't say anything about teaching it. It doesn't say anything about teaching it universally. When Honorius is condemned at the Sixth Ecumenical Council, did he teach it universally?
I'm not sure.
No, he did not. He wrote it in a letter supporting the monothelite position, and he's condemned by the council.
Okay.
So there's no this is a made up idea that the Bishop of Rome is only a heretic when he binds everybody to it universally. That's just completely made up. Since when has there ever been the criteria to be a heretic that you must bind the entire church to it? Only the Pope could do that, and so that would mean that only the Pope's a heretic.
That's what I'm saying. Like, he could be a personal heretic, but if he doesn't teach heresy as the universal
No,
teaching of the
that's
church,
that's made up. No, that's just simply made up. There's no where in Roman Catholic theology does it tell you that you're only heretic if you privately teach theology. And I just gave you the case of Honorius, who didn't publicly teach it universally. He wrote it in one letter, and he's condemned as a heretic.
Yes, him personally is a heretic. That doesn't mean that
there's no such thing as personally versus the office. He's excommunicated and condemned at the Sixth Ecumenical Council. They don't just say, well, he wrote this in one letter, so he's privately a heretic, but he's not excommunicated. 3 successive councils and statements after that reaffirm his excommunication.
Oh, I mean, like, how's this? I mean, you could say that them doing that.
Was Martin Luther a heretic? Was Martin Luther a heretic? Was Martin Luther excommunicated because he bound everybody to the heresy, or was it because he taught heresy?
Because he bound everybody to the heresy.
No. How could Martin Luther, a priest, bind everybody to the heresy? That doesn't make any sense. He's a heretic because he taught heresy.
He acted on his heresy. He acted on his heresy. That's why.
No, you don't even have to act on it. You can, if you teach it, that's what makes you a heretic in the Roman Catholic system.
And was that not what he was doing? He was teaching everybody his heresy, and that's why he's a heretic. But regardless,
a priest can't bind people to the doctrine. Only the Pope could bind the whole church to the doctrine. So I'm saying that the idea that the only thing that makes you a heretic is universally binding everybody is preposterous, not true, and literally only the Pope could do that. You don't see the point that I'm making there?
No, I'm sorry. Repeat that.
The idea that to be a heretic requires binding the entire church to it is not what it takes to be a heretic. That's a silly criteria. And only the Pope has the ability to bind the whole church. So therefore, only the Pope could be a heretic. That's why it's silly. Martin Luther could not bind the whole church to his heresy. Therefore, Martin Luther was a heretic not because he bound the whole church to it. He couldn't do that. He was a heretic because he taught heresy.
And where are you getting that definition of heresy?
Well, in Roman Catholic canon law, heresy is defined as the pertinacious, obstinate teaching against the magisterium. That's all it's required to be heretic. There's nothing about universally binding everybody. That's something that Roman Catholics make up to give the idea that the Pope can and cannot be a heretic. There's nowhere that says that a heretic binds the church to their heresy. Who can bind the whole church to a heresy? Only the Pope. Or to any doctrine.
Well, yeah, that's true. That's why the protection of the Holy Spirit is there, so that he doesn't teach people heresy on a universal level.
Well, that's what you're saying, but that's your assertion.
Let's say right now, let's say Pope Francis, for instance, obviously there's stuff in the news, but obviously like there's a whole bunch of like secular stuff that's making that bad and all that stuff. But ignoring that, let's say he was a complete heretic personally, and he does not actually.
Where did you get the idea that you can be a personal heretic that doesn't affect you publicly? That's just made up.
Of course you can. Of course you could do that.
That's your assumption that you've made up. That is not the case in church history.
That doesn't make any sense. How could logically?
It makes perfect sense because you're not aware of church history. Honorius wrote a letter and he's condemned for that letter.
Yeah, yes, that's what I'm saying. You can be a personal heretic but not teach heresy.
That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about what makes a person a heretic in Roman Catholic moral theology and canon law, and all that's required is the obstinate, pertinacious defense and public teaching. And it doesn't have to be public teaching. Doesn't mean that you universally bind the church. Honorius wrote a letter to another bishop, and that's what condemned him at the Sixth Ecumenical Council. It's that simple.
Oh.
So you're saying that, well, Francis can be a private heretic, and that doesn't affect his office. Yeah, but we're talking about people who publicly commit the sin of heresy. That's what we're talking about. And that is not defined by whether the document is for the whole church or a letter to a private person. If Benedict XVI, for example, writes a book that denies the resurrection, but it's his private opinion, that's still heresy. He's still a heretic. It doesn't matter whether he says it's his private opinion or he tries to bind the church to it. He's teaching heresy. And Vatican I says that the Roman See does not teach error. It doesn't say that, well, he privately can teach heresy.
Is it that general? If it's that general,
absolutely.
Interpret that it could.
It is, because the Roman See does not defect. And if the Pope teaches heresy, he's defected.
Okay, but you could also interpret it to where it's specifically talking about the universal teaching.
What are the three criteria that Vatican I lays out for what dogma is? Do you know?
No, not personally.
Okay, so there's extraordinary magisterium, which is like ex cathedra, perhaps even an ecumenical council that the Pope affirms. There's universal ordinary magisterium. The first two that I listed here, those are protected by the charism of infallibility. And then there's ordinary teaching, which is fallible, but must be submitted to with docility. Those are the three criteria that exist for magisterial teaching. That's it. So the first two are governed by the Holy Spirit, right, and the charism. And what I'm saying to you is that heresy, it doesn't matter what authority the person attaches to the document. If the Bishop of Milan writes a letter and says, you know what, I don't believe the doctrine of, transubstantiation anymore. And he sends that letter to his aunt. And the aunt says, and goes to the newspaper, and people start reading, oh, the Bishop of Milan no longer believes in transubstantiation. Is that person a heretic in Roman Catholic theology?
Yes, by definition.
Thank you. So, proving my point, it doesn't matter what authority the person attaches to the document, whether they attempt to bind everybody to the document. That has nothing to do with whether that person's a heretic or not. Otherwise, Martin Luther could never be a heretic, because Martin Luther didn't have the power to bind everybody to his doctrines. And yet he's a heretic. That's why the Roman Catholic Church in Denzinger and many places condemns propositions. Condemn proposition, meaning if you hold to that proposition, you're a heretic.
Okay. I mean, I guess, but like...
Exactly. But what?
Well, how does Orthodoxy, like, mitigate that system then? Like, if someone, let's say the bishop or the archbishop of freaking Antioch or something like that,
yeah,
was like a heretic and he's teaching heresy in his diocese, then how can Orthodoxy condemn him?
Synods and synodalism. That's the way it's always happened.
But then what happens if like the Antioch
so there's examples of this in the first 1,000 years of Christianity, right? You understand that like we have situations where various patriarchates schismed against others and condemned each other and so forth.
True. But
So
like,
your question is answered in the first 800 years of Christianity.
Right, but like, let's say like I'm in the 8th century, right? And I'm just like a guy who just got, I'm a freaking German who just got introduced to Christianity, and like I see this group of others. Like, how do I determine which one is actually the true church then? Because each of these quote unquote churches are condemning the other churches in their own councils.
Mm-hmm. But you understand that the office of the papacy also isn't going to solve that question.
Yeah, it can. Because
no, it doesn't.
Yes, it does.
Did it solve that question at the Sixth Council? Was it right to follow Honorius?
It did it in other councils, earlier councils.
Okay. But that's my point. If it doesn't do it every time, then it doesn't automatically solve it.
It doesn't have to do it every time.
It does. First of all, via Vatican I, it does have to do it all the time. And if you just took your example and put it in the 600s at 681, it doesn't solve the issue. So that's all I have to do to defeat your argument is that the papacy doesn't solve it either. So there's no ease. There's no like.
That doesn't win you though. Just because you're pointing at my system and saying that this doesn't work for your system, that doesn't mean that your system is any better.
My system is the system of the first 800 years, which is synodal. That's the point. So Orthodoxy does the way the church always did it: synods, councils.
So if the Catholic Church did a synod, that would just mitigate what your claims are, right?
But the Catholic Church is not based on synods, although Francis is trying to go back to that. So,
okay, like if they did councils or if they did synods, that would just be the same system as your system, right?
But the papacy doesn't work that way. So what I'm saying is that the way this question would be solved is saying, well, what is the church of the first 1,000 years? How did they operate? It's a synodal church. It's not the papal church. That's my point.
Mutually exclusive, though.
Huh?
They can do both. Why can't they do both?
Well, if it's the church of the first 1,000 years is synodal, we don't want another type of church that's also not synodal and is papal. That's two different systems.
It's not another kind of church.
You just said why don't they do both?
Say again, because just in case.
Well, there are two different churches. There's the papal church and there's the Orthodox church. So the very history of the church bears out that there's two different churches here. The two different systems. They don't mix. You can't have a synodal church and a papal church. Are you familiar?
I don't see why you can't because
they're mutually exclusive systems.
For small matters, like if something's going on solely in...
Well, this is all divorced from history. So have you read Dictatus Papae?
Dictatus Papae, you said?
Yeah.
No, I haven't looked at that.
Okay, look up Dictatus Papae. It's only one page. That's mutually exclusive to the Orthodox conception of the church. That's oil and water. Those two things don't mix.
Okay, what is it? What is it saying? It like just a brief like.
The Pope is the Kwisatz Haderach. The Pope is the super being. All the emperors of the world must submit to the Pope. The Pope decides who the emperors are. I mean, it's just like all geopolitical power stuff.
Is that dogma or doctrine?
I mean, Unum Sanctum says that you have to submit to the temporal supremacy of the Pope to be saved. So yeah.
I mean, you would also believe that you would have to submit to the church authority, like your local bishop, to be saved, because.
But that's a false analogy, because this is about worldly power, which the canons of the councils forbid clerics from having. But now the Pope has all of the worldly power. So how is that not a violation of the teaching of the first 7 councils?
How do you know if that's speaking about worldly power or just apostolic power?
It literally is about the temporal power of the Pope. Unum Sanctum says you must submit to the temporal supremacy of the Pope to be saved. It's a famous controversy.
How do you know that's not talking about like his temporal power, meaning that like he's in bishop for that time?
It's a famous controversy about the temporal authority of the Pope over emperors and kings.
Well, yeah, of course. Wouldn't you also believe that the church has authority over
No.
kings?
You don't understand. This leads to the Pope having standing armies and going to war. This is where you get Vatican Bank. Worldly power. Clerics are not civil rulers. The ancient canons forbid clerics from being civil rulers.
So no bishop in the Eastern Orthodoxy has ever...
The canons forbid it. This is the Roman Catholic Church saying it's necessary for salvation. So, yeah, I'm sure there were Orthodox bishops who violated those canons, and that was wrong to do that. But that doesn't mean that, well, if Orthodox bishops violated it, then the Pope can make it dogma for salvation. You don't see how crazy that is?
Oh, but okay, what's the difference between that and like saying like, let's say the Bishop of Byzantium said it's good for you to join the army and defend your nation against the freaking Mongols or some shit like that.
That's not the Bishop of Constantinople saying that I am the head of all kings. He's saying I'm the King of Kings on earth. You don't understand what this controversy is about? Controversy. Unum sanctum. To be saved, all kings must submit not to the spiritual authority of the Pope, to the temporal authority of the Pope. The Pope is the Emperor of Emperors, King of Kings. The Pope calls standing armies. The Pope has giant war chests to go to war. You understand that the canons of Chalcedon and later councils in the first 1,000 years forbid clerics from holding civil office. That means a bishop can't be the king, can't be the emperor.
Okay, no problem.
So anyway, the best illustration of this is the document called Dictatus Papae. And then if you want to see the dogmatizing of it, it's Unum Sanctum of Pope Boniface. But great questions. Appreciate that. Father Moses, did you want to speak to that or something else?
No, I was just an observation. I don't know if you want to call it a spiritual observation, maybe more of a psychological observation. But when you listen to these Roman Catholics trying to defend the Pope, it's like, I don't know, it's like you're going to a buddy of yours and you're like, hey man, like I saw your girlfriend at the a restaurant the other night with another guy, and they're like, no, that's not what, no, they're just friends. He's just a good guy. They just like each other. They've been friends forever. And you're like, I don't know, it looks really suspicious. Doesn't seem to add up, And then it's like, it's like 10 minutes of just guys saying, yeah, well, that doesn't make sense and that doesn't add up, but it's supposed to add up because I'm Catholic or something, or like, I don't know. It's a weird, it's a very strange psychological phenomenon. You can take it for what it's worth, but just observationally, it's very cultish behavior.
Yeah, I would agree.
So like when all the evidence is stacked against you that the Pope is doing weird things that he shouldn't be doing, your response is like, well, no, he's allowed to because he is the Pope. And you're like, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
The church is bigger. I mean, again, it kind of fundamentally runs down to that thing, which is the church is the body of Christ. The church is bigger than the Pope. The Pope doesn't define the church. Christ defines the church. And history is the revelation of how the church has historically operated. But, it's kind of, I don't know, it seems like it's kind of lost on me.
That's a great analogy, Father. I got to remember that.
So I found it's in Chalcedon as one of the, it's Canon 7 of Chalcedon says, we decree that those who have joined the clergy or have become monastics cannot depart for military or secular office. If you dare to do this and do not repent, you are anathema. Now, that means that according to the canons of Chalcedon, the clerics, the monks, they're not able to go into kingly civil service. It doesn't mean that kingly civil service is bad or that it's wrong to be a ruler or governor or judge or whatever, but the two offices are distinct. And thus, when you get to Dictatus Papae, and the Pope is saying that I am now the head of all kings in the world, meaning I am a worldly king. It's not just saying that, oh, he's just talking about spiritual authority. No. He's saying that he has temporal authority. This is what the triple crown of the Pope always symbolized. The triple crown meant that the Pope was King of Kings and Emperor of Emperors on earth. That's the meaning of the triple crown. That's why it was significant when the modern papacy after Vatican II stopped wearing the triple crown. The papacy was saying, we are no longer considering ourselves temporal kings and rulers. Now, that doesn't mean, by the way, that, oh, well, then the Pope's good now because he quit doing that. Do you understand that unum sanctum and the temporal supremacy of the Roman bishop is still on the books as dogma? So just because he's not wearing his big hat doesn't mean that it's not still in the books. Although Vatican II does seem to have contradicted this because now they believe in de-Catholicizing the nation states. So how they make sense of that or make that work, I don't know. But to me, it illustrates the point that the papacy clearly innovated in Dictatus Papae in saying that they're above all rulers, Unum Sanctum is the document that says that you have to believe this to be saved. You understand? This is made dogma. Unum Sanctum. It's a very famous encyclical, Pope Boniface VIII, 1302. And it says to be saved, not only do you have to be in union with the Pope, you must also submit to his temporal authority as well. And that's because of all the controversies happening at that time between the Pope and the kings.